One place we can't visit just yet is space. Now, you know I love this topic. And last week, you were all opened to the stargazing apps that you all shared with us just in time for our guest today on Good Things. It is David. He is an internationally recognized astronomer, and he's the author and space artist of 12 award-winning books about space. His most recent release is the National Geographic Kids Space Encyclopedia. It's a tour of our solar system and beyond. So welcome, David.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's great to be here.
I have looked forward to this conversation for so long. I am our residential space nerd, and here in Mississippi, we are pretty proud of our Stennis Space Center, and we keep an eye on what they're doing in terms of testing those rockets to hopefully get the first humans to Mars. But that's not what your book about. Your book in the jacket says Love Space, and I raised both hands. I was like, yes, tell me everything I need to know. But I would love to know, David, when did you fall in love with space?
Oh, I fell in love at a very young age, and I loved flying saucers, and I loved alien movies at the movie theaters. And one evening, I noticed my neighbor was standing out on the end of his driveway with a telescope, and I wandered over to see what he was doing, and he showed me Jupiter and all of its moons, and I fell in love with astronomy.
I can imagine why, and it's something, too, that's just fascinating. It's one topic I feel like that brings the world together like few topics can. It's just the exploration of space or this idea that we're a small part of something much, much bigger, which I love that. So how did you jam-pack this book in, or how did you pick which information, should I say, to jam-pack this new book with?
This book, I didn't start out to write this book. I began as a space artist painting outer space using scientific information from some of my best scientists at the University at Harvard. And National Geographic found out about my artwork and then wondered if I might want to become an author. And there it is. That's how this whole book came about.
So it's geared towards kids, which I feel like, though, all of National Geographic's books for children are great for the whole family. I learned just as much through them as I would any other sort of book, particularly because it focuses on the visual aspect of learning. So your art is just absolutely spectacular in this book. So are these your drawings, or are these photographs taken from like a telescope or from astronauts, or where did you get the artwork for this book?
Some are photographs that we took with the Hubble Space Telescope, but the majority of them are artwork that, as a scientist, I put together to be as accurate as it really would look in outer space if we could jump in a spaceship and look out the window as we passed by it. So that is art that I have created on my computer.
Well, it's absolutely fantastic, and it's great for the visual eye for sure. I know kids and parents, particularly as we're looking for something to do during quarantine, will enjoy thumbing through this book if space is of an interest topic in their home, which I think it's an interest topic in everyone's home, whether they like to admit it or not, because we've made some pretty amazing space milestones over the last, probably hundreds of years. But everyone listening to Good Things, David, has at least experienced a space milestone collectively as the human race. So take us through some of the most, I guess, significant, or at least the ones found in your book.
Well, I think there's so many discoveries. We've discovered that the universe actually had a beginning. We've discovered that there's mysteries out there that we never had imagined. We have found planets beyond our solar system that look very much like Earth and could certainly have life living on them. And we found that this is really kind of odd. Our planet Earth is just big enough to have life on it. If it had been smaller like Mars, it would have lost its atmosphere, and you and I wouldn't be here talking. And so Earth was just the right size, but we found super Earths that are 2 and 3 times larger than the Earth out there that will more than likely have the possibility of life living on them. So could you imagine an Earth that is 3 times bigger than the one we have right now?
No, but I think that's something cool to sort of think about, right? That's the fun to me, David, with space is these ideas and these new discoveries, and it's continually to evolve. And from where I stand, I get a sense of peace knowing that I'm just a little bitty piece to something much, much bigger, right? It takes some of the weight off of your shoulders to know that there's this great big universe out there left to be discovered and explored. But I know you talk a little bit about the tech of tomorrow, including maybe some space hotels or even colonizing on Mars, which we know that it could be a reality in the future, maybe not in our lifetime, but certainly maybe in our kids or grandkids. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, what we've talked about exploring, and when we think of people going to Mars, we would just jump in a spaceship, and it would take us almost a year to get there, and then we would have to wait another year until the Earth and Mars lined up again, and then another year to fly home. So in our minds, the idea of going to Mars would be a 3-year journey, and nobody wants to be stuck inside a little spacecraft with 4, 5, 6 other people that halfway through the journey you realize didn't care that much for them. But what if we built a hotel, and it was a hotel that went back and forth between the orbit of Earth and Mars? It would be like taking a cruise ship to Mars, and you could have entertainment, you could have people on board, and you just join the hotel in orbit above as it passes by the Earth, and off it goes to Mars, and then you jump off on Mars and spend some time on the surface, and then get back in the hotel and come home. So that's the future of space travel. We can make it easier, a little bit more luxurious, and a lot of people could go. And I'm going to bet within the next 50 years, we might begin to see something built along these lines where humans could explore other parts of the solar system.
Well, one thing 2020 has taught us, David, is anything is possible. Now, we're going to actually close out 2020 with something pretty cool in the sky. When you talk about the planets lining up, I think some refer to it as the Christmas star, and it only happens every 800 years is what I'm reading online. I am certainly not the expert, but we have you here on Good Things. So tell us about what's happening on December the 21st.
December 21st, right at sunset in the western part of the sky, the planet Jupiter and the planet Saturn are going to come together, or appear to be so close together, that they're going to join together into one bright star that night, what looks like a bright star. But what we do know is if we go back into history and we take a look at these events that have happened with planets, we discover something that is really amazing. Now, the Star of Bethlehem was called a miracle, a wondrous event, but it was never said exactly what it was. So as scientists, we've gone back to try and figure out what it was. We know it wasn't a comet because comets were thought to be very evil. And if a comet showed up, people would have been really afraid. They would have not thought that was a miracle in the sky. If it was a star that had blown up, there would have been records of it, a supernova that would have suddenly appeared in the sky, because the Chinese were crazy about writing records of every supernova that ever occurred in the sky. And when we go back in history, we can't find one that would have occurred during that time period. But guess what? The Greeks and everybody thought that the planets were gods. And they talked to one another, and they moved in the sky and influenced things that happened on the Earth. And these were the Magi. The Magi were astrologers. They were watching the planets very closely. About 5 or 6 years before Christ was born, Jupiter, the mightiest of the gods, and Saturn, the grandfather of gods, got together, and they were in Pisces the fish, the constellation, which was the sign of the Christians. So everybody would have said, wait a minute, these new Christians that are out there, there's their sign in the sky, and the two mightiest gods are talking to each other inside of Pisces the fish. And then at 1 BC, before Christ was born, Venus, which is the brightest planet in the sky, I saw it this morning when I got up. It was brilliant in the Colorado skies in the east. Venus would have come together with Jupiter, the second brightest object in the sky besides the moon, and I'm sure the Magi would have said, whoa, look at that over Bethlehem. That's a sign. Gas up the camels, pack your bags, let's go.
And they did, and that is a beautiful sort of story behind the Christmas star. But the thing is, you will be able to see it on December the 21st, as I am told. And that leaves us hungry for more, which is perfect that you want to do as an author, David. So tell us where we can get your book, the National Geographic Space Encyclopedia.
You can get it on Amazon.com. Just go up and order it. And I want to say something else about this great alignment on Monday, December 21st. Any of you out there with small telescopes, point it towards Jupiter, and when you look in the eyepiece, you're going to see something you've never seen before in your life, because right next to it, almost touching it, will be Saturn. It will be beautiful.
Beautiful. Stick with us. More good things.